What's up, guys? Ben here, bringing you an interesting one today. We got some major news last night. I wanted to make a video on the Hector and Scump lawsuit against Activision Blizzard. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not an antitrust lawyer, so we're just gonna go through top down some initial thoughts on this. Obviously, probably some smarter people will make some content who are real lawyers and kind of discuss their thoughts on the merits of the case. But this one's really interesting for the future of Call of Duty esports and where I think things are going. So let's dive in and take a look. All right, so news broke pretty late last night. First off, in Bloomberg Law had the exclusive early, and then the court document, which I have, ended up hitting the docket. And obviously people started going through it. But anyway, Activision accused of Call of Duty tournament monopoly. Basically, Hector and Scump are suing Activision Blizzard for monetary damages. They're trying to go to trial, and basically they are saying that the Activision Blizzard went through a monopolistic process to take control of Call of Duty esports and squeeze out tournament operators, squeeze out players, squeeze out teams. Pretty much anyone that's not a party that's the publisher was hurt or damaged in some way, either economically or otherwise, by Activision's attempt to control the Call of Duty esports space. There are a lot of allegations in here. We're going to go through some of them, not all of them. I'm going to stream. My stream will probably be live by the time this video is posted, but I'm going to go through all 44 pages of this lawsuit on stream. Personally, I think on the surface here is a very interesting case. There's a lot of antitrust and monopoly cases have been litigated over the last 100+ years in regards to professional esports. Sorry, not professional sports, rather, not esports. Esports didn't exist 100 years ago. There's obviously a very famous case involving Major League Baseball. There's a couple involving the NFL. Point is that on the sports side, the antitrust monopoly thing is got a lot of case law that has gone all the way to the Supreme Court. We haven't really seen that in esports. That being said, I am not surprised that this may be an attempt, or one of the attempts or aims of this lawsuit is for Hector and Scump to get a settlement with Activision Blizzard in advance of what I think is going to happen, which is the league will pivot, the owners will get bought out. But interestingly enough, I think to that point, if you actually pull up this lawsuit, you'll notice that Optic Gaming or Envy Gaming is not a party in this lawsuit. And I assume that's by intention, because at the end of the day, if there's a settlement, if the owners get bought out by the league, Hector and Seth would see none of that money because that's going back to investors, the owners, etc. While Hector is part of the organization and CEO of Optic, I don't know if he would then benefit financially from a buyout that would happen in that way if the league were to buy out all the owners. So it's another way for him and Seth to get compensation for what they claim are damages. All right, so I'm going to quickly go through a couple of some of the claims here. First part is that, kind of in the beginning of this process, that Activision bought MLG in 2016, fully monopolized its esports business, and claimed Activision failed to get agency permission to acquire MLG. This argument is interesting to me. I don't know if an acquisition of this small size is really something that's going to be reviewed in earnest just off the rip by the FCC. I don't really know the process described here in which the FCC would review a transaction like this. Is that something that you have to lobby the FTC to trigger? I don't know. It is a smaller acquisition. It's also a weird one at the time too, because the assets of MLG were sold to Activision, but not the holding company. Basically, the guts of the company were sold to Activision, and a lot of investors into the original MLG company were left holding the bag. So interesting one from all the people involved in that. Again, curious to see in discovery if, Sundance, Sepso, all the people that are probably involved with that sale, Bobby Kotick, are going to have to answer questions about this, but interesting. So a big piece of this lawsuit discusses Hector, and in particular, how he tried to get involved with the Call of Duty League and the fact that he basically had to get investment or merge or get acquired by another investor in order to be able to participate in Activision's private closed franchise league. And there are some real strong accusations in here we'll get to in a second about Hector not being the type of owner the league wants. And it kind of walks through what Hector had to do to get involved, the fact that he had to sell the company to the folks in Texas, the folks on the West Coast when Optic originally sold to the Infinite guys. And then when he bought back the spot from OGLA, from Immortals, and the fact that the league, had to make him get involved with another investor, which made him, kind of get into business with Envy. Very interesting on that front. There's actually a really interesting point that I saw this morning, that at one point in this, they call out a conversation that Hector had where an Activision executive told Hector that he was not the type of owner Activision wanted for the league. He'd be required to partner with billionaire investors who looked like Activision's ideal for lead professional Call of Duty market together. Obviously, we will see in Discovery, if we get to the bottom of this conversation, this is obviously part of the complaint, but in the process of a lawsuit, the Discovery, we'll get to the bottom of this conversation. Who was in it, who said it, blah, blah, blah. I know everybody hates, and myself included, the whole exclusive, broadcasting situation with YouTube. It's talked about in here that, that was part of a trade with Google because Activision wanted to use Google Cloud for hosting their services, and this is part of the trade in order to lock in that sponsorship. I don't think that's really news. I think this has been known, and we've talked about on this channel for a moment that was, the CDL YouTube deal was always part of a bigger, partnership or business relationship with Google. And then we can kind of dive in more to this sort of sale piece of this when Hector got back in to get involved with owning Optic and not Huntsman. He reacquired the brand from Infinite and / Immortals, and those transactions down the line there. But basically Activision was like, hold up, you have the Optic brand, but we have the ability to withhold consent of the sale due to our agreement. And so Hector then's having some conversations. He tried to raise money. It's not in here, but Hector tried to prove that he, had the ability to operate the spot. They claim in the lawsuit, and I'll review on stream that Hector had to show proof of income to be able to control the spot. And then they said, well, you got to get a line of credit. And then at the end of the day, because of all the pressure, Hector had to get involved with an investor that Activision would be happy with, which was the Dallas Empire operators, MV Gaming. And Hector had to give those investors 92.5% share of Optic. So didn't know that. Very curious. Didn't know that Hector, it's to be expected that Hector doesn't own a majority position in what is the Optic brand now. So some news there. And curious to see if we'll kind of dive in more if this case would ever get to Discovery. I think two more interesting claims in this lawsuit that I want to discuss. Service level, just kind of things that, kind of on first read that kind of stood out to me. One is that, at some point during the course of the league, and it doesn't really call out exactly when this happened, the teams had to accept new terms to the league to release any claims of Activision in exchange for debt relief and a sum of money. So this probably explains why you don't see Optic Gaming or Envy Gaming as a party of this lawsuit, because of probably the terms of what they signed to this, and that would probably lead to this case getting instantly dismissed. And basically Activision would have said, if you didn't sign this, you're not going to be able to host a tournament. So very interesting. I assume in Discovery we'll dive in on this claim, when this happened, blah, 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 blah. But it probably explains why, part of the reason why Optic's probably not a party in this lawsuit. It might also explain to an extent why, the other teams are called out as co-conspirators, defended Activision. They aren't parties to the lawsuit. They're called out as co-conspirators, and I assume that's a vehicle, again, in an actual trial or in the litigation to depose those owners and have them speak to understand a lot of these, including this claim right here. So the last one I want to talk about, again, there's so much to talk about here, but I'm just trying to give you guys a surface of this. This one, I actually think that this particular situation is very interesting to me. So a couple of days before opening weekend 2020 in Minnesota, there was a player summit. And during that player summit, it's probably 3 or 4 days before the tournament, players were asked to sign an additional agreement. They'd already signed their player contracts, but they were forced to sign an additional agreement binding them, basically a handbook and rules. And Scump had asked to review the document, and they basically said, if you don't sign it, you can't play. They obviously tweeted about it. This one's interesting to me. I assume Activision will argue that the rules weren't ready, and they're going to try and make up some spin excuses as to why they forced them, or it was presented to them so late before the first match. But this situation is interesting and very curious who is involved in these conversations. They'll obviously probably become deposed in this lawsuit. So anyone on the player relations side, the competitive operations side, the team operations side may have been part of this conversation on January 21st. But this one's tough, man. I really feel for players. Basically, you pull up 3 or 4 days to the event, they hand you basically a giant legal document, say sign this or you can't play. And to the point of what's in here, there's some restrictions, sponsorship and brand deal issues, which, by the way, if you scroll down, last thing in here, I don't know if it was I will find it real quick, but basically and to the extent of that, why that agreement ended up being a big deal is Scump later on, after Modern Warfare 2019 into Vanguard did an off-season stream for Raid Shadow Legends and was issued a disciplinary letter from the Vice President's League's administration, who I'm pretty sure I know who that is. You can Google and they'll tell you who that person is. But basically, that person issued a letter to Seth that, you know, he had violated the agreement, and Seth obviously wasn't being tweeted about it. But a lot of real interesting things in here and a lot more claims. Look, here's my take on it. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not an antitrust lawyer, so I don't know how valid the claims are in here. I don't know if there's ground for dismissal that Activision might try. Obviously, they've got to accept the lawsuit as a defendant and kind of decide how they're going to defend the case. But I do think that likely Scump and Hector will probably walk away with some kind of settlement here. I think if this does go to trial, there's obviously huge implications for the esports industry, because we've not seen someone really challenge the publisher-owned team tournament operator, sort of the closed franchise model in relation to the Sherman Act, how monopoly laws work in the United States. Obviously, that is good case law for regular sports. We haven't seen it as any kind of case law for esports. So if we go that far, this case is going to be really heavily watched because it's got a lot of implications for the industry. So more to come. I also wanted to, before I end this video, read the statement that Activision responded to last night in regards to this lawsuit. They said, Mr. Rodriguez, aka Optic Hex, Mr. Abner, aka Scump, demanded that Activision pay them tens of $millions to avoid this meritorious litigation. So they obviously sent them a strongly worded letter written by a lawyer, and when the demands were not met, they filed. We will strongly defend against these claims. We have no basis in fact or law. We are disappointed that these members of the esports community when the suit which disrupted the team owners, players, fans, and partners invested so much time and energy into the Call of Duty League success. Obviously, listen, Activision, Microsoft, a big company, they pay big time law firms to litigate this. Obviously, they're going to hold the line, but as all things come with sort of suits like this, it usually ends in a settlement, so we'll see what happens. So let me know what you guys think. If you guys are obviously antitrust lawyers, I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments. Like if you enjoyed the video, subscribe for more. And as always, guys, we'll see you on the next one.